Hello and welcome to this Festival Pro tutorial video. Today we're going to be looking at forms, how to make new forms, what all the settings do, and we'll just go deep into how that all comes together in Festival Pro. So to get to your forms, we go Dashboard, Forms, and we have a nice set of categories here. These are all the groups that your forms can live in. We can actually start to filter these down by searching up here. So if I wanted to bring up an advance, you can see here I start typing advance. I can see all those different forms, and I can obviously then click into these groups to expand them. And these are all the default forms that come with Festival Pro. But today we're going to look at how we create a new form, and we'll just set up something from scratch and go through each of the sections on the form so you know what they all do. To create a new form, we need to be in config mode, and then forms and events. At the bottom you'll see a button, add new form, and this is going to allow us to create a new form in our system. We can title this form, so we'll call this one titled form, and we can choose a group for it to live in. This is related to those sections we looked at a second ago. We can create a new group if we like. Let's do that for this one. We'll call this one our test form group. We have our registrations open from, so these are the dates when the form is available to be completed. If somebody visits the link outside of these two date periods, they'll be informed that the form is closed. And then you have page design, which is in essence how the form looks. And these are dictated by our form templates, which live under design and form templates. You can get in there, copy them, edit these and adjust them, and do that if you're talented with CSS, but we do recommend you use the default ones because they are already pre-configured to work in the best of scenarios. So we'll use form template logged in. Next we have access options. Who can complete the form? Now if this is on a public outside world section, then someone who completes this form will in essence be able to do it via a public link like a Google form or something similar like that. You can see here though that we have other options. Auto login forms are essential to Festival Pro. Once somebody has filled in a public outside world form, if login is set to no, this will create a new contact in your system. Whereas auto login forms are what we send to people who already exist. So often you'd use a public outside world form for, say, an application form, and then once you've confirmed those people, you would be sending them auto login forms to save information against them. Most of the time you'll be using single form per organization. This is per company, so per artist there is one form. There are scenarios where maybe you need a single form per contact, or we're just rolling out in beta being able to do multiple forms per user. But in most circumstances, you'll probably be using the auto login single per organization. Then access levels is going to allow us to choose who can see these, and these are relating to your Festival Pro users. So you might want anyone who has organizer to be able to get in and see the form settings and config also. And then maybe you also want the artist liaison to see this stuff, but you don't want them to be able to change any of the form settings. Under payment options, if you're taking payments on the form, you can check this box, and this will give you a lot of options relating to your sales. So if you're doing tickets on the form and you wish them to be able to resell their ticket through our fan-to-fan reselling module, you can tick this. If you're going to have deposit tickets, you can click this one. Must purchase an item or ticket will force them to make a purchase through the form. They won't be able to complete the form without having selected something to buy. And then you have various things such as tax if you want to send an invoice to them. Payment taken relates to payments going through Stripe. So if you click yes, we're going to take a direct Stripe payment. If you click no, then that will give them the option to have an invoice at the end, or if you choose optional, they're going to be able to do either a payment via Stripe, or they'll be able to take the invoice and do buybacks. Most of the time people leave this on yes. There is an option to capture and not charge, but I'll speak to us in detail about this. This is more if you want to do a holding deposit. Stripe can hold the funds for so many days, capture them, and then you would be able to charge them if, say, somebody didn't turn up to a shift, if you wanted to use this instead of deposits. There are limitations to this though, depending on where you're based, depending on how long Stripe will capture that for. You can then set currencies for different forms, and under access to their account, this is if you want them to be able to get into the ticketing platform to do fan-to-fan reselling. If you're not using Ambassador or ticketing, you can set this to no. If you're creating a form where people might pay a deposit for a pitch fee and then later they come back and pay off the rest, you would use something like invoice access for your vendors for that. I'll leave this on none and quick look at on completion. If you're generating tickets on the form, we can send those either to the main booker or to individual names if that's something that we're capturing. You can lock the form on completion so people can't come back to it and make changes. You can also have a notification come to any email address of your choice when someone has completed it with a copy of what they have filled in. So let's go ahead and click save, and this will take us to page 1. Let's begin by just previewing this form as it stands right now. And you can see there is nothing on here pretty much at all, apart from a box saying admin only visible, and this is something that when we're testing, you can check this box if you don't want to send somebody a confirmation email upon completion. But we'll save that for a later time, and let's get building a form out just to collect some basic information and show you how this works. So we've got a top page text section here, and we can put some text in here and it will display at the top. So I'll just go ahead and paste some text into here. You can do all of your formatting in here. It's just a standard WYSIWYG editor that will allow you to build out the text that you want in the top. You can actually customize the button text as well, so we can make this one say next. And now if we refresh the form, we can see that information coming up at the top. Because the form that we're creating here is an auto login form, it would also be possible to mail merge information according to the profile it's being sent to. So we could come in here and perhaps put in the name of the person, or we could indeed mail merge in people's performance fees, stage times. It really depends on the kind of form that you're building, but you can play around and add in any mail merges that you might need. Underneath we have the section to add in all of our fields. So if I come here and add a new field, you can see we've got various different types here to allow you to build out anything that you might need. Down below we have the primary contact fields. These are relating to the contact themselves. If you're creating a public form, you must have a first name, last name and email address, because we need those to create the contact in the system. In our case, we're not actually going to do this. We're going to set up an auto login link. I'll add these anyway because you'll be able to see how it automatically pulls in that information and pre-populates it according to the contact that we're sending it to. So let's just add another couple of simple fields in here. We could take a large text box. I'll call this "Tell us your story." You are able to put descriptions next to fields. Each field also has some extra options. These vary depending on the type of field that you're doing. In this case, it's a large text box, so we can limit the size of it. You can make these required fields here, and you can limit the number of entries. This is the number of times the same option can be repeated. On auto login forms, this allows us at later points to limit things by numbers in their profile. For example, a ticket field, and they can only have as many tickets as you've set them in their profile. If I just save this text field here, and we go and refresh our form, we can now see the first name, surname and email are pre-populating because I'm using the demo system account. It knows who I am. And down here is our "Tell us your story" box. So let's just look over the other tabs at the top. If you're running a payment through the form, you can customize the payment page. This is the text that will appear on the payment screen. The completion page is the page that they see once they have completed the final submission. And the confirmation email is what gets sent to them when they have completed the form. Just get a better look at how these stats and searches go. I'm going to go to a form that already has registrations in my system. We'll take a look at our ticketing form. And if I go into the form and have a look at the stats page, you'll see here we can see how many adult weekend tickets, for example, have been sold. There's various different tools here. I'm just going to go to the top here and add in a tickets sold tab. And now down here I can see how many adult weekend tickets, for example, I have sold, 25, along with the total payment. Next we'll look at searching forms. I'm just going to go back to my forms list. I'm in config currently, so that's under forms and events, but if I'm in organizer mode, we'll find this under dashboard. And let's just go to, say, the artist advance. Under the registrations is obviously everybody who has completed that form, and we'll look at this in more detail in a moment. However, I'll go to the search tab. In here we can search either answers given on the form, so in here perhaps we want to search for everybody who has not yet uploaded their tech spec. And here they all are, and we can send perhaps all of them a chase up email. Or if I go back to the search tab, we can also search their profile fields. So we want everyone who has filled in this form, we're going to search that registrations list and filter it down by all of our artists who are on the main stage at some point. Here we have 3 main stage returns of the advance. The registrations list is everybody who has completed the form, and in here we can either click on view and see everything they have submitted. Here we can see, say, the names that they've given, the tickets that they have been allocated, the QR codes, any of their tech specs and other information. But you can also view this information all in a list, and if I just come into the add columns button over here, I can then choose either any of the form fields or indeed any of the profile fields to show the information here. So perhaps I want to see everyone's tech specs and their Spotify's, and I can do this. And I can see all these tech specs that people have submitted here, and these are the people that have given their Spotify's. With inline editing, you'll then be able to actually click into these sections and update this information in the field yourself. So here I can add in someone's Spotify, or indeed if I just go to add columns and then I'll go to accreditation and add their general accreditation passes, I could come through and start adjusting and perhaps give these guys an extra 4 VIP passes. There's many ways to use the add columns feature combined with forms. A very common one is if we're doing a public form. So let's just take a quick look at, say, an artist application. You'll see here when we set up a public form, we have copy URL and visit at the end instead of just the preview. This gives us the public URL that people will be able to visit and submit, say, an application form. And when we have the registrations and people complete this form, they become a company or an artist in your system. And then we can add the columns, say for artist and confirmed. And as we've reviewed the applications, we can come in and mark the people as yes, no, or maybe, which then become searchable and filterable and exportable. And there's other videos which will go into more detail in how to export your information and work with everything that we've just collected. But if here I just do a search for maybe, we can see that act that we just set. So hopefully this has given you a good overview and a starting point to working with forms in Festival Pro. And if you have any specific use cases where you're trying to set up a form slightly outside of the box, don't hesitate to reach out to us, jump on a support call, and we can help you out with that.